Hey, what's up, guys? Little man with a big opinion here. So, I think it was last week, maybe the week before, I was talking about some stuff from this book, The Survival Retreat, a total plan for retreat defense. And I thought I would go over uh, section 15, the defensible retreat checklist. Uh, not every single thing in this book is applicable for me. It might not even be applicable for you. So, this is one of those things where you kind of, read through this. The things that are important for you are important for you. And if they're not, then you just kind of skip over it. And I thought I would, just kind of give my 2 cents a little bit on some of this stuff. You can give your 2 cents in the comment section down below. Subscribe to the channel. That helps us out. Share it with your friends and family. And subscribe. That helps us out the most. So the first thing on here, and it's very simply broken down into yes or no. I guess you can write in the book if you want to, but you don't have to. You can even print this out and type it up yourself. But the first thing on here is, will the retreat hold all of the people who are likely to use it? So whether you're bugging out, bugging in, you've got some sort of bug out location, whatever the case may be, you want to have space for all of your people. It's kind of like buying a tent to go camping. If 4 people are going camping and you buy a 3-person tent, you should have bought the 4-person tent, if not a 5-person tent, so you can store all your gear and have a little bit more space. Does the retreat provide inherent protection from nuclear, biological, and chemical threats? That is getting to high level, survival stuff. I kind of mitigate most of that based off of where I live. I live out in the middle of nowhere. I don't plan on moving anywhere closer to a bigger city, so I'm not that worried about that. So I would check it no, but I would have to technically say yes. I'm also going to turn the light off in here and see if it gets rid of that glare. Oh, we still got the blue glare on my face. Oh, but if I sit like this, it goes away. I think it's coming from the window. Is water available independent of any municipality source or supply? So that one is quite easy to deal with. We've got rain barrels. Still need to buy gutters to, properly fill them up. But, that's independent of the municipality source. The rainwater that we collect, we can drink. We have a spring out on our farm and access to a lake. So I would say yes for that. This is one of those things where you either set up, rain catchment, a well, have some sort of open water source, or, depending on where you live, like I've watched a couple videos on doing those solar stills, where you're collecting the water from the air and, things of that nature. But that one is kind of dependent on your area. If you have a, flowing creek that goes through your property, you're good on water. If you have a well, anything that is not you give money to a utility company every month for your water bill falls into that category. Do I know how I will preserve my food? That one can be its own, you know, video in and of itself. I've stored up a lot of salt because you can use salt to prepare or preserve foods. We've been doing that for hundreds of years. Uh, me and my brother went camping and we smoked our fish one time, and we've made beef jerky in one of those solar stoves, and that's canning your food. You know, it could be you have enough solar and battery backup that you're running a fridge and a freezer. That's modern ways that we preserve our food. And, you freeze your meat, it lasts dang near forever as long as it stays frozen. Canning using our freeze dryer, that could be its own video. And each of those individual things could be their own video. But that goes into, simply put, if you shot a wild animal and you couldn't consume all of the meat in one setting, you clean it, you prep it, you cook it, and you eat it. For a squirrel, you're not preserving much of anything unless you're trying to, save up all the hides to make a blanket or mittens or something like that. But again, that kind of goes into its own category. This is just the checklist where if you check no on something on this, you go find other YouTube videos or other people or books to learn that kind of stuff. Have I identified how I will heat and cook? Again, propane, wood, something along those lines. You gotta have a way to prep your food. Even if it's just boiling water so that you can, rehydrate Mountain House meals. Is it possible to safely store food, clothes, explosives, guns, and ammunition at the retreat? So, again, that's very, very open-ended. I've got my phone sitting on top of one of my ammo boxes right now. Actually, I think I have magazines in there. But, totes, Pelican cases, I want to build a cabin out there this summer. And, that will be a dry place that you can stick stuff in a tote and store it out there. It could be as simple as you put up a tarp and, you made a little lean-to so your stuff stays mostly dry. Again, fairly open-ended. Can the location be secured now before it is actually manned during the collapse? Yes and no. It's open property out in the middle of the woods. A few dozen people know it exists that's mostly family that have property that butts up to it. It's got, a 5-line barbed wire fence that goes around it. So I would say no for that one. Does it have adequate facilities? Can all these people wash occasionally? Will the toilets work? I mean, the shovel works. The little 5-gallon bucket that I use as the toilet works. Toilet paper that I take out there works. No shower at the moment. Can the retreat be obscured and hidden now and after the fighting starts? I'd say it's pretty well hidden. Do any neighbors or friends outside of those who will be using the retreat know its existence? Y'all on the internet knows it exists. I've made a couple videos setting up tents and things out there. Really, currently, as it stands, we're staying in my house. Have I devised a workable defense plan? Yes. It is, defense in depth. We're looking at a few hundred acres, and several other family members going out there. Have we really set up much stuff? Not really. You know, it's still a work in progress. Can the area be patrolled? Absolutely. You know, there's a county road on one side, it butts up to a lake on the other side, and it's, you know, dense wooded pines with a handful of like logging roads that go through it with a couple of open areas. Is the retreat actually defensible, or am I just kidding myself? Kind of kidding myself. Can the approach be mined and guarded? Absolutely. Do I have the proper equipment to guard them? Yes and no. Is the retreat in an area where I can raise a garden, scrounge, and generally set up a viable existence after the collapse? Absolutely. And I would honestly say, you know, like, here's a good example. I picked these up. Carrot, lettuce, beet, tomato, zucchini. They're made by 4 Patriot. They put it in a Mylar bag. And it's the Victory Garden Seed Collection. We do a lot of gardening here on our property in town. And we are getting better at it. We are yielding more crops than we were the very first year we tried. We're constantly getting better. And so I have a very good feeling that we could go out and plant stuff and keep it alive out there because we can keep it alive here in town. Do I have a library in the retreat? No, because I don't have a, you know, like secure kind of building. You can kind of see here in the background, you know, I've got bookcases. I've got a lot of books. You know, that would honestly be one trip in itself, trying to get all that stuff out there. And I'm not in a financial position to buy, you know, 2 copies of each book. You know, I like the books that I have. I do have a hard drive where I've downloaded a bunch of stuff onto it. And, you know, it's a work in progress. Is the library good enough to provide information needed after the collapse? If not, what books do I still need? That's an awesome question. We're not complete. I like my books. I want more books. I want more knowledge. I download as many videos. Like I've got it here. You know, this is my old. Oh look, you can see that I was getting ready to play Battlefield. I've got my old phone here. Works perfectly fine. There's nothing wrong with it. It's just I was able to get an upgrade for less than I'm paying a month right now. I'm still signed in. I download, like, it is full of books right now. It's full of PDFs and all this other stuff. That's one of the ways that I'm storing stuff. So you know, this question's kind of wild. Do I have adequate amounts of everything to implement my minefield and man traps plan for the retreat, given a fair and honest evaluation of what I will probably have to face? Probably not setting up a minefield. You know, that is like way further down the line of issues. If you're putting a lot of time and effort and money into having the stuff to make a minefield, you probably should have put it into, you know, food and medical and water and things like that. Which goes into the next part. What about medical supplies and information? Have I got that covered? So about 3 weeks ago, I took a wilderness first aid class. Awesome class. I think it's a lot better than other classes I've taken because that one specifically talks about you know, dealing with medical stuff. Like amongst like the gear that you have. And so it was a good class. Do I want more medical supplies? Always, absolutely. They talk about a Geiger counter and decontamination suits. You know, do you have a plan for keeping the hordes of people from coming anywhere near your area? Yes and no. Have I evaluated my people and attempted to fit them into the various duties the best way possible? You know, the good questions. And we're kind of running long, and we still got several more of these. There's like 2.5 more pages of this, so I'll just start spitting out some of them. And we'll probably split this into 2 videos. Have I identified how I will heat and cook? Oh, we're already on that page. Am I psychologically equipped to defend my retreat? Can I actually shoot and trait intruders? That's its own standalone question. That might be a next video that I do, because that one is, you know, probably a difficult one for a lot of people to answer. Does everyone know which situations will actually trigger the defensive plan and when to set off the mines and explosives and start shooting? Do I have a stock of barter items? Are they properly stored? Do I know how everyone will get to the retreat? Do they have at least one alternative contingency plan for getting to the retreat, preferably 2? Have I evaluated the various threat possibilities and then made realistic plans to counter them, especially for the non-confrontational, non-military threats? Are the immediate approaches to my retreat such that they can be made impassable by booby traps or just plain physical means? Do I know how much time it will take to close the approaches and who will be in charge of this job? Do I have a battle plan that fits everyone into the defensive structure? Do I know the warning signs that will indicate that it's time to put my retreat plan into operations? We'll do 2 more. Do I have the correct guns and enough ammunition, or have I been swept away by the armament gurus into believing tons of hardware can replace the right amount of the proper equipment? That's its own video. Have I planned for retreat communications? So we still got half a page here, another full page, and another full page. So we'll stop it there because we're starting to get kind of long. So in thinking of this stuff, hopefully I have created a level of, you know, thought in your head. And, you know, you should probably think of those things as well. You know, not everyone's answer is going to be the exact same. Your answers shouldn't all be the same. Because if they were, then everyone, you know, it would just make things super, super easy. You know, where you live is important. Are you in a city, or you live out in the middle of nowhere? You know, what's your income like? What do you already have? What job do you have? You know, when the whole collapse thing happens, you know, where are you at when it happens? The size of your family, you know, the age of the members of your group, their skill levels. You know, there's so much that can go into, you know, this says survival retreat. I look at it, you know, for my own house. I look at it for a bug out location. You know, most people probably don't even have a bug out location. There have been people that have said, if I have to leave my home, we're going to this, state park, national forest area, which, that's all well and good. You have a plan for your primary location falling apart, and, all of our financial situations are different. Some people's primary location can be hundreds of thousands of dollars more well equipped than other people's stuff. Uh, Living in an apartment, you can only store so much stuff. Depending on your state, they don't let you buy certain things. Uh, the vehicle that you drive to work every day. I'm lucky that I'm able, to drive my grandpa's truck. It can basically go anywhere. The car that I had, not so much. Uh, I feel very, very lucky the firearms that I purchased when I was in college because, having a wife and a kid is expensive. Some people are shooting thousands of rounds a month. Other people are shooting maybe once a month, 100 or so rounds. Your fitness level plays a big part in this. I was walking around my house yesterday, while the wife was in the garden, carrying two 40-pound dumbbells and just walking, around back to the garden and back up to the front. Did it 4 or 5 times, and I was tired. I also weigh 130 pounds, and so that's a fairly significant amount of weight for someone my size. If you're, 5'11", 240, you're probably carrying way more than that. We were watching some strongman competition stuff for our PE class the other day, and these guys are lifting 500 pounds, doing this and that. Their mile time is probably terrible. I'm messing around. I'm trying to set my flick up in more of like a just kind of get out of Dodge, kind of Minuteman style setup. I was messing around with it. I've pulled almost everything off, so it's pretty blank. But I have put, a 4-mag pouch on the side, trying to figure out if I like it in that spot or if I want to move it up 1 or 2 more. Thinking about hydration, all that kind of stuff. Some people are going to say, okay, that's a flick. Those things are like $15. There's no, armor capability there. You mess around with what you got. Check out the checklist. Again, it's the survival retreat. I would say the checklist in there is good for wherever you live, whatever you're doing it with. It could be a 1-bedroom apartment. It could be a 10-room mansion on 1,000 acres. All of the stuff on the checklist, it applies to everyone. It doesn't discriminate in that way. It really should just kind of get you thinking. Is this the stuff that I like? What do I need to worry about more? Because that's the one thing about the checklist that doesn't help you out, and that is, it doesn't really say an order to do those things. I think he just kind of listed them off and you go with it. If you can say yes to everything on that list, there's probably more stuff to add to the list. But we're getting a little long here. Subscribe to the channel if you like this stuff. Leave your comments down below. Dislike it if you don't like the video. Like it if you do. Share it with your friends and family. But until then, I'll catch you in the next one.